We've shared notes a number of times on some different pathways to take an existing landscape. For a lot of people, the existing landscape would be lawn, mowed lawn context that they're trying to move up into productive garden space and then ultimately move up through succession into a productive and meaningful and resilient food forest type system. And we've talked about doing that through the pathway of potatoes, which we made a whole bunch of videos about in 2020 about that, maybe some even last year. Talked very recently about putting cuttings directly into the lawn and mulching around them as a pathway. Today I'm going to look in our neighbor's spot at something we did very recently that is extremely high yielding for the amount of effort and cost. So let me explain what that looks like to erase a lawn in probably the easiest way you could imagine. So we're over here at our neighbor's spot, which we've talked about extensively. This is the lawn to food forest conversion project, and there are all sorts of different ways in which we've leaned into strategies to take this out of lawn. So April 2020, this was lawn, and this is what it is now in June of 2022. And so lots of different ways to look at that. We've talked about that. I can go into more detail on those in the future too. What happened recently that I thought was just remarkable how effective it actually was is this little area here directly in front of me. I think it was back in early May, so what is that, just about 2 months ago, a little less than 2 months ago, we got a call from a arborist who drops chips off for us periodically and said, hey, I've got a load of chips, where do you want them dropped? And I said, let's just put them right here. This is in our neighbor's spot. It's super easy for them to pull in with their truck and dump right here. My intention was to move all of these chips to other spots, but I moved them a bit and then I realized, hey, this is an opportunity to experiment. Can we just erase the lawn where they are by spreading them out a bit? And so far, it's amazing how well it's working. This pile was a few feet high when it first came in. I'm gonna guess it was maybe around 10 yards of wood chips. It was $0. I normally like to give those folks tips. This guy was the owner of the company and didn't want that, but I'm happy to give them $20 or some beer or food or something as a thank you, but the cost is generally either free or very low. And we used a wheelbarrow to move a lot of those chips to go around these air prune boxes. This was all lawn as well, and this has been working pretty darn well. The only character that seems to be popping through intensely through deep deposition of hay and wood chips are violets, which were here in the lawn, and I'll tell you, I'd be happy to have that be the case. So where it's getting weedy with grasses, we can pull those as needed or just dump more mulch. And where the violets are, we'll just let that come through, especially next to the boxes, and we'll just get a lovely ground cover of violets in this new production space. But once we dumped all the hay and wood chips, there's no cardboard, there's no plastic, there's no tillage. It was just deposition of mulch. That lawn is pretty much gone. And this area was just the wood chips spread out. And I would describe it as nearly 95% erasure of the plants that were there. There are plants here again, but these are plants that we're hoping to see grow. This is a question that's still an experiment for sure. I'm not going to say this will come to fruition, but these are all traditional flint corn transplants that went into Permaculture, and I'll explain how we got them established. There's also beans to fix nitrogen and some other companion plants amongst these. What I don't think would work in any way, shape, or form is to get a load of wood chips dumped and either immediately or within a few weeks just say, okay, cool, I'm gonna pull the wood chips aside because the lawn's gonna die, because I saw it on that YouTube channel, and push in seeds and say it'll grow. Wood chips take quite a while to break down and become actual soil. If things do germinate, they're gonna become very yellow and probably die because of all the nitrogen lockup that's happening from the decomposition of the chips. But here, what we're doing is simply taking the wood chips, now that we've seen that the grass underneath has been killed, and then pulling it aside, pulling the pile aside. So this gives you a sense of how deep they go down. And these wood chips, we lucked out, they had a little bit of soil in them too. But anyway, pull a bunch of wood chips aside into that pocket, dump compost, good finished known compost or garden soil or muck rich healthy soil, put that in and then transplant or seed into it. And that's what's happening here. So this is compost from our chicken yard with 2 corns transplanted in, some beans for nitrogen fixation, a little basil close enough to the edge of the wood chips that that's what it looks like when you plant into wood chips. Very yellow, pretty anemic and weak. And then some random seedlings from the compost in the form of amaranth and tomatoes and squash, which we're always happy to see. But that's without any tillage, no plastic, no cardboard, just wood chips for a few weeks, then pulled aside, pocket of compost and transplant. It still remains to be seen if these come to fruition, but they're really on a good track. They've got good color to their leaves. Their roots are now below the wood chips into the soil below and growing really nicely. In the areas where the wood chips were clearly not deep enough to do complete weed suppression, so right in front of me, these are plants that popped through because in the process of spreading the wood chips out, we must not have gone deep enough here. Two ways to go. If I'm really eager, I can of course try to pull them, but that almost always is more sadness than happiness to do. And so I would normally use a hay fork, not a weird hand tool to do this, but simply wherever plants are growing that you don't want, if you have enough reserve of wood chips, you can simply keep pinning them until finally they succumb. And we'll do that 2 or 3 times. Each time they die back a bit, maybe they pop up again, recover again. But you get to avoid this if you go a little bit more liberal with the wood chip deposition right out of the gate. I'd say 8 inches or so is about as minimal as I'd want to go. But that lump right there is our backup cache that we can pull from with a hay scoop. We're in no rush, but we'll tackle as time allows the grasses here or there, the dandelions, the docks that pop through. But that's pretty low effort for sure. So for $0, just a handful of weeks ago, a load of wood chips from a local chip drop place dumped strategically on lawn area that we wanted to see erased has now erased a fair bit of lawn. I'd say it's around maybe 16 by 16 foot area here that is 99% weeded, quote unquote. And as the wood chips break down, they're going to release ever increasing amounts of fertility into the soil. There'll be fungal networks. This space is going to be incredible for doing woody perennial growth next year. It's a question mark whether or not the corn, the beans, and some of the squash will thrive, but so far they're doing well. And we even popped a Japanese walnut in the north end. We dug through the wood chips, dug into the ground, and planted that. So there's already a keystone in here. Probably one of the easiest ways to go about this, if you can make a connection with an arborist or a tree care company, or make calls to your highway department or electric company to be a place to have chips dropped. So chip drop is a way to do it, but also cold calls to those places, super helpful. We could have a truck pull in, back up, dump a pile there, spread it out to 8 inches in all directions, and just go boom, 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 right down the line. And this becomes all permanent, no-till, high fertility, fungal rich, water retentive, weed free production space for $0. So tip them generously in whatever ways feel appropriate, because that amount of benefit for effort is astronomical, and those folks work really hard in a dangerous business.